Hi, I'm Trish Lynch, and I'm here for Politipeeps, and we have Michael Norton. Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a physicist and a marketing strategist. I run a sole proprietorship called Omi Firm. It's an acronym for Odeus Marketing and Investing. And my full-time job is to work as a marketing strategist while I work as a day trader and part-time while I travel the world as a digital nomad.
So we have a couple questions for you, and these are obviously we're Politipeeps, so these are political questions. So you travel the world, and you've obviously experienced different areas. How does policing generally different in other areas in the U.S. versus how police act in the United States?
It completely varies depending upon which country you go into. China is its own animal. Latvia is its own animal. Every single country is a little different. I wouldn't give a sweeping generalization of how other countries are outside of America. But if you were to ask me about my specific experiences with different countries, then yes, I could probably speak for hours about the differences. But I've experienced way too many different instances, from riots in China, such as the Dao riots. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that was it was really on the Chinese national news, and people were overturning cars in the street. I was there for that. I was in the middle of it. And
Oh, wow.
there were riot police. I mean, it was bad. But that's just one political incident. On day to day in China, you have the regular police, and you have Chengguan, which is the shadow police, and I don't have any proof or anything like that pertaining to what they do or whom they're connected to, but there are two different kinds of police, and it's a radically different environment than America. And that's just China. It differs depending upon where you go in Europe and other areas of the world.
So let's bring it back to the United States for a minute. So many people believe that Black people are disproportionately arrested, incarcerated, and killed as a result of encounters with law enforcement in the U.S. Some solutions that have been both implemented and suggested include wearing body cameras, demilitarizing the police, because there is a large amount of people who think that the police have become too militarized in the United States. How would you solve this problem?
Police brutality is a multifaceted equation. When people see a viral video of a Black person being shot by a police officer, there's the initial emotional reaction. There's the hysteria with every desire and attempt possible to blame the police before applying critical thinking to what it is that they see on screen. Some people are faster to overcome their emotional reaction than others, and even as that occurs, it's only natural that some are better at critical thinking than others. But not everyone has the same level of same education. The differences in intelligence and perspectives and experiences are the colors of the rainbow and diversity. So critical thinking is always driven by guiding questions, such as when pertaining to looking at any given instance or any given occurrence of police brutality. The first two questions that pop in my mind are, one, what was the person doing to catalyze the tragic event, if anything? Because maybe they're innocent, maybe they're not. Right? And the second question is, what were the laws and codes of conduct the respective police officer was beholden to at the time in the given jurisdiction? And that's a critical one, because the laws and codes vary not only by state, but by district and precinct. So each case is its own isolated event with a wide array of variables affecting what is right and wrong in that isolated event. But what you'll tend to see on the internet, propagated most by people who don't take the time to do the due diligence necessary to yield an informed opinion, are blanket statistics covering the entire nation that are only accurate to use in certain contexts because each incident is isolated. So the counterintuitive answer to how I would solve police brutality in America is this: I wouldn't. I wouldn't dare think myself so infallible, so omnipotent, as to think that I could come up with one singular legislative or final solution for solving the issue when both the free will of the officer and the free will of the civilian, regardless of what ethnicity they are inalienable terms of the equation that have to be navigated around in each isolated incident on a case-by-case scenario. So to respect the freedom of not only African Americans, but anyone of any ethnic group in America, is to simply lead by my own example. That's how I would do it. And then whoever would choose to follow that example would, and whoever wouldn't. So I don't have problems with the police, personally. I don't. Some of the people who commented on my Facebook page are police. In fact, I myself gained a top secret security clearance by the FBI as a veteran when I was only 19. So for some magical reason, even after having left the military, I've just not had any personal problems with the police in any country I've traveled to. That includes China, which is what I was speaking about in the beginning of this interview. So the primary reason for that is because I don't commit any crimes, nor do I carry or conduct myself in a way that fits the criminal profile most police are trained to look for. And if there is a police officer, and there have been, that's questioned me and usually within 30 seconds of speaking to me, their entire demeanor changes. They relax, I relax, especially with white officers. In fact, I've had the most tension with black officers. So blacks in America, I wouldn't think, I do not believe in the narrative that they're disproportionately arrested. There are three major factors that go into the statistics for their arrests and police violence that explains, at least from my anecdotal experience and from both being black and just looking at countless videos and breaking each video down in my mind, like what this person's done different here. Sometimes the police officer is guilty, hands down, right? Sometimes they are racist, sometimes they are oppressive, sometimes they absolutely do violate the law. I've seen videos like that where there's no gray area. The police officer was clearly in the wrong. But typically, the statistics are the way that they are because the black person is legitimately committing a higher frequency of, they are committing a crime of some sort, and it's right for the police officer to engage them. Either that or they're not as intelligent as other ethnic groups in general to commit crimes and not get caught. All right, so it may not necessarily be that they commit less, that they're being disproportionately arrested or that they commit more crimes than other ethnic groups. It could be that they just don't think strategically enough to not get caught, where that's another one. And the second major reason is that many of them who aren't committing crimes may dress and behave in a way that fits a criminal profile that a police officer may be looking for, which draws needless attention to them. And that ties into the third reason, is that even if they are innocent, often when in the vicinity of other police officers, because of the way they behave and act, especially when pulled over, they lose control over their emotions and fail to follow directions. So even if they were totally innocent, they may end up committing a crime inadvertently when put on the spot because of an emotional freakout or inability to quickly prioritize what actions they should or shouldn't take in the heat of any given moment, which leads to a chain reaction of micro events that make the police officer either use force or arrest them in general. All right, so in a nutshell, I don't commit crimes. I don't dress, act, and hang with people who fit the profile, your typical criminal black profile, and I'm not as susceptible to losing control of my emotions in the heat of any given moment when interacting with officers. Thus, I retain great control over the cause and effect of micro events in any given singular interaction that I have with other police officers, and that yields a radically different life result, which is why I'm able to have the company that I have and travel the world in the way that I have. So it's not just African Americans, but anyone really. If they followed that example, I bet every single dollar in my bank account, I bet my life that the vast majority of statistics as they stand would, by majority, not all of them, but by majority, would vanish seemingly overnight. And none of this all of this would be a non-issue.
So one would, and this is sort of taking a little pushback on some of this. One would say that regardless of the behavior or that police should be governed by a certain set of rules that are, enable the freedom of the citizen rather than the whim of the police officer. So, for example, I get stopped and, lipping off to a police officer probably isn't a great idea, but it's certainly not a reason to be shot, right? So those micro events, when they go out of hand, largely can be pointed at, well, was the police officer either trained or responding within the bounds of their duty? And I think that, in some cases, or in a lot of cases in this particular example, that a police officer has a duty as a public servant to not overreact, to not do these things if it's not illegal and it's not hurting somebody else. And this is the libertarian argument, obviously. If you aren't hurting somebody or not taking their stuff, then what's the big deal?
You just committed a straw man. You just said that the officer overreacted. Who's assumed that the officer did overreact? So once again, it comes down to a case-by-case scenario, in which case depends on the codes and laws in that area, which pertains exactly to what you just asked. So yeah, I agree that we should maximize the freedom of each individual citizen, and that is the libertarian argument, the maximization of the freedom of each individual citizen. So in that case, let's zoom out and view the restrictions, the legal restrictions in the given area in a case-by-case scenario. So what you just did there was pretty slick, but not very smart. It was that you presented the officer by default as a person who overreacted, when in fact, depends on how the person lipped off. What is it exactly that they said? Can you specify that? Which would be different on a case-by-case scenario. What if they said something that was legitimately threatening as a form of lipping off, quote unquote, to the officer? What if it wasn't? So if you could get very granular with that, then I can give you more answers.
Okay, let's say they didn't. They just said, you don't have a right to stop me for this, or I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you stopping me? Why are you giving me a hard time? Okay. What we're talking about is there have been a lot of scenarios where somebody was operating within the bounds of the law. They weren't hurting anybody. And police have overreacted, even if they were breaking the law. And let's take Eric Garner, for instance, right? He was obviously breaking the law. Was the law just? I mean, there are those types of questions involved, right?
Right, so that's what I'm saying. So they're absolutely, and I deny none of those questions. So case by case scenario. When it is a legitimate case of the officer overreacting, well, then yes, punish the police officer. When it isn't, then no. It's very simple in the way you frame that question.
Thank you, Mike, for coming. And can you tell people how to find you online?
Yeah, YouTube, my YouTube channel. They can find me at nortonsmind.com. And nortonsmind.com has links to the different social media channels that I have. So right now I have my Facebook channel and my YouTube channel. And if you go to nortonsmind.com, you'll find a whole bunch of stuff and links to each respective social media channel that I'm active on.
Okay, and this is Trish Lynch for Politipeeps. And subscribe to our channel, hit the bell if you want notifications on when we post things. Thanks.
Thank you.